What the fuck is up, everybody? Brandon here, Scourge of Vinyl. Time for my top 10 albums of 2018. I'm excited to get this started. I hope you're excited. As usual, this list was crafted using my opinion. If your opinion varies or is different, so be it. If you don't like this list, make one of your own. If there's something on here that you don't like, oh well. If there's something missing from here that you do like, again, just make your own fucking list. It's not that difficult. Don't be an asshole. So, coming in at number 10, Torture Rack with Malefic Humiliation. This was co-released with 20 Bucks Spin and Parasitic Records. Torture Rack from the Pacific Northwest is true caveman death metal. I mean, just look at these sick fucks. This is some straight up sewer dwelling, fucking ugly, just brutal, disturbing sounding death metal. I mean, if you were to just be like a Ninja Turtle and live in the fucking sewers, eating pizza and lifting weights, this would be the soundtrack. Torture Rack, Malefic Humiliation, songs like Found in Feces, Destined for Dog Meat. Some of the song titles are fucking amazing. The lyrics are fucking just downright filthy. Torture Rack was one of the most fun listens of 2018 for me, despite being just a grisly death metal album. But Torture Rack with Malefic Humiliation, coming in at number 10 on my list. Great fucking album. Number 9, Infernal Coil, Within a World Forgotten, released by Profound Lore. The first time I listened to this album, it's so harsh, it's so caustic, it's so raucous. I really didn't know what to make of it, and at first I kind of just brushed it off. But again, you know, I'm not one to listen to an album once and completely write it off. Sometimes it takes a few listens for things to really soak in, and Infernal Coil, Within a World Forgotten, was one of those albums for me. And the more I listened to it, the more I just fell in love with it. The opening 2 tracks, Wounds Never Close, and then Continuum Cruciatus, just fucking fly by. I mean, those 2 tracks in total are like barely over 4 minutes. And it's just non-stop blast, non-stop fucking harsh riffing. And it really just like leaves you in a whirlwind. And then it hits you with Crusher of the Seed right into 49 Suns, my favorite track on this album. 49 Suns is about like 7 or 8 minutes long, and the last like 3 minutes are just this kind of ambient interlude type part, and it's really the only reprieve that you get on this album, because then you have Reflection of Walden Samkite, I don't know how to pronounce that shit, Bodies Set in Ashen Death, and then the closing track in Silent Vengeance. Not a bad song on here. Total just grinding black death metal. Probably more so on the death metal side than the black metal side of things, but there's definitely some black metal influence going on in here, all wrapped up in this kind of like grindcore outer shell, and it's a really just non-stop barrage against your senses. What an album, you know. Infernal Coil, Within a World Forgotten, coming in at number 9. And then at number 8, Skeletal Remains, Devouring Mortality, released by Dark Descent Records. This band takes the elements that I fucking love from bands like Asphyx, Pestilence, and Obituary, wraps it up into their own modern sound, and delivers a full-fledged death metal assault. This is another album where there's not a single bad track on here, but to point out a few highlights for me, Catastrophic Retribution, my favorite track on here. the title track Devouring Mortality, Reanimating Pathogen. This is a very modern sounding death metal album. The production is pretty clean as far as death metal goes, but it works, and it lets a lot of the instrumentation shine through, because the guitar work on this album is fucking brilliant, especially the solos on here. If you are a musician, you can definitely appreciate everything that's going on here with the guitars, the drums, the bass. It's just a very, very well written album by a bunch of talented guys, and a very strong full length. Their Dark Descent debut, Skeletal Remains, Devouring Mortality, coming in at number 8. And at number 7, this is my favorite black metal album of the year. This is Natura Gnar with Mysterium Tremendum. Got banged up in the shipping. Please try and ignore that. Still infuriates me, but this was self-released, or, you know, if you want, you can say that Symbolismus Work released it, but that's, I believe, is Natura Gnar's own label, so essentially self-released, but they're from Austria. This, I believe, is their third full-length album, and my personal favorite of theirs. This thing is just loaded with fucking riffs. If you like bands like Uada and Migwa, there's something to like there. If you like stuff that's a little bit more on like the colder side of things, like say Immortal or Dark Throne, the classic shit, there's stuff for you in here. This is a total crowd pleaser. I feel like if you like black metal, you'll find something to like on Mysterium Tremendum. This, as soon as I heard it, I figured it was going to be my favorite black metal album of the year, and it ended up that way. It held up throughout the entire year. Lots of competition, but you know, this one just head over heels, won me over, and I fucking love it. I listened to this album a lot this year. Natura Gnar with Mysterium Tremendum, my favorite black metal album of 2018, coming in at number 7. At number 6, Outer Heaven with Realms of Eternal Decay. These are friends of mine. I was so excited to hear this full length. They've been playing these songs live for a little bit, so I had heard a bunch of them live, and then to hear them finally recorded on a full length, released through Relapse Records, was such a treat. The songs absolutely do justice to their live sound. Not too overproduced. A lot of fucking riffs on an album like this. There's some stompy parts, there's some moshy parts, there's heavy riffs, there's slow riffs, there's down-tempo, mid-tempo, there's some blasts. You name it is fucking on here. Heavily, like, later Morbid Angel influenced, especially like Formula's Fatal to the Flesh. Songs like Vortex of Thoughts, Pulsating Swarm, Echoes from Beyond, Bloodspire. Amazing shit on here. Proud to call these guys friends of mine, and I'm incredibly proud of the product that they've put out, and to see how well this album has been received is just a joy for me. I love seeing friends of mine, you know, put themselves out there artistically and creatively, and to have it so well received and well praised and talked about. You know, that's really cool for me. You know, just supporting these guys since they started and seeing them get to this point. You know, that's what it's all about. So if you haven't yet, which I don't know how you haven't yet, but listen to Outer Heaven with their debut full-length Realms of Eternal Decay. Number 5, HyperdontYa with Nexus of Teeth. This is a band from Denmark and Turkey. This released by Dark Descent Records, Meisako Unoho, press the vinyl version. This album, where the fuck can I start? The incredible artwork by Paolo Girardi, the old school sound with the really raw production. I love the production on this album. It's super raw, not clean at all. A very natural sounding drum performance, which you don't get a lot these days. I feel like this is an album that could fit in sort of any era of death metal. When you're talking about like the early 90s, it fits, maybe like the mid 2000s, and all the way up until 2018. This is an album that transcends time periods. It's so good that it doesn't fit into any certain period, any certain subgenre. I mean, it's just a straight up death metal album. I as soon as I put this on, the first track, Purging Through Flesh, just hits with that just fucking, oh man, the drums and the guitar riffing. Then you have songs like Aura of Flies, Majesty, which just starts off just fucking pounding, like, man, what a fucking great album. If you can't tell by my enthusiasm, I fucking love this shit. HyperdontYa, Nexus of Teeth. If you like death metal, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't listen to this one. Then coming in at number 4, this is a record that I don't really need to talk too much about. Tomb Mold, Manner of Infinite Forms. Anyone who likes underground music, anyone who likes death metal has heard Tomb Mold, likely heard this album. It's been on everyone's year-end list, and for very good reason. Sometimes I feel like when bands receive a certain amount of hype, or when a band's name is on the tip of everyone's tongue and everyone is talking about it, I feel like people sometimes have a tendency to push it away and just not give in to the hype or not hop onto the hype train. And I understand that. I unintentionally do that sometimes, and then I'll come around and say, you know what? If everyone's talking about it, there must be a good reason for it. And the reason for everyone talking about this Tomb Mold record is that it's fucking good. Plain and simple. There's nothing else that I need to say. This is just a really, really good album. In fact, I was talking to Arthur Rizek at the show they played in Philadelphia, and they were praising Arthur and sending out thanks and shout outs to him. And I was talking to him, and I was like, so did you produce this album? Did you record it, or did you just mix and master it? And he said, I just mixed and mastered it. And honestly, anyone could have done that shit because it's just a good album. And I took that statement to heart because it's totally true. It would have taken a lot of work to try and fuck this album up. That's how good it is. Songs like Blood Mirror, Abyss Walker, which has my favorite death metal riff of the year in it. Final Struggle of Cells, Chamber of Sacred Uthika. This one's got it all, man. I really don't need to go into too much detail here. Released by 20 Buck Spin, a label that fucking knocked it out of the park this year. Tomb Mold, Manner of Infinite Forms, coming in at number 4. Number 3, and this is an album that I haven't seen anyone else talk about really, and that's Antichrist with Pax Moriendi. There's a whole bunch of different Antichrists out there. This band is from Peru, released by Iron Bonehead Productions, and they've been dormant for a long time. They've been in existence for over a decade, and this is really their first material of note to be released. And it's death doom, the heaviest shit that I heard all of 2018. The heaviest album that I personally have heard probably since Disma's Towards the Megalith, which is high praise because that album is one of my favorite albums of all time. And as soon as I heard Pax Moriendi by Antichrist, I knew in my personal opinion, that I was listening to something special. Songs like the opening track, Forgotten and Nameless Suffering, Obscurantism, In the Dark and Mournful Corner of Memory, and then the epic closing track, You Will Never See Sunlight. This is just absolutely grim, heavy, dark, dense. The vocals are so fucking deep, so fucking crushing. This is an album that hit my fucking soul, man. And I don't know why. I don't, for the life of me, I haven't seen anyone else talking about this fucking album, which blows my fucking mind, because this album is so good. For me, it was an album of the year contender. Nearly made it, but there's a couple more. Antichrist, Pax Moriendi. I'll leave a link in the description. Please listen to it. That's all I gotta say in conclusion. Number 2, Drawn and Quartered with The One Who Lurks. I hope the glare isn't too bad. I'll go ahead and just take the booklet out of the jewel case so you can see that artwork there. This was my favorite death metal album of the year. This band has been around since the 90s. They're from Washington, released by Cruciator Productions. And there's not a vinyl release for this yet. Drawn and Quartered is a band that doesn't have many vinyl releases, but I hope that this one eventually will get one. And, you know, everyone that knows Drawn and Quartered knows that they sound a hell of a lot like Incantation. But the thing about Drawn and Quartered is they've been doing the whole incantation worship for a long time, before it became a popular thing to do. And I think that they've been in existence for so long now that you can't really call them an incantation clone or an incantation worship band. They are Drawn and Quartered. This is what they do. And, you know, around 2 decades into their existence, I think that they have written their best album with The One Who Lurks. Every single track on here is astonishing. Really, really fucking good. Nefarious Rites, Ravage the Cadaver, Horned Shadows Rise, Deliverance to the Worms, my favorite, Carnal Transmigration, the title track, The One Who Lurks, Portals of Communion. There's not a bad song on here. As a whole, this album is so easy to sit down and listen to the entire thing all the way through, because there's never a point where I get bored. There's never a point where I want to skip a song or a certain section. The whole thing is, as a cohesive piece, it just doesn't get much better than this when it comes to death metal. Of course, that's my opinion, but God, it's no more words. That's it. That's all I got to say. I fucking love this album. Drawn and Quartered, The One Who Lurks. Death Metal Album of the Year, coming in at number 2 on my list. And then finally, number 1, my favorite album of the year, Judas Priest with Firepower. And I knew as soon as I heard this album that this was going to be my favorite album of the year. This got released back in, like, I don't know, February or March, so early 2018. And it stood up. Nothing topped it. I stuck true to my guns, and Judas Priest, Firepower, my album of the year. The Metal Gods, you know, their legacy is already cemented in time. They will go down as one of the best heavy metal bands of all time. But it's a testament to how much they love doing this, that they're still writing new records, they're still touring. A band like Judas Priest isn't hurting for money, and these guys are up in their 60s now. There's literally no reason for them to continue writing, recording, and touring other than the fact that it's what they absolutely love to do. And when you have a band that is so dedicated to their music and just the love of it, that's when you get an album as good as Firepower. Of course, the title track is great. Lightning Strike, Evil Never Dies. You know, there's some songs on here that I'm not as fond of, but I wouldn't say that there's any filler on here. Maybe Guardians, which is just like a minute-long interlude track, but Rising from Ruins, and then my favorite 1-2 punch, Flamethrower into Spectre. Holy shit. And then Traitor's Gate, No Surrender, Lone Wolf. Man. Again, not a bad song on this record. I know a lot of people were a little bit worried that Judas Priest, you know, without the two original guitar players, you know, both no longer in the band, Andy Sneap gets brought into the fold. What was this album going to sound like? Was it going to be classic Judas Priest? And, you know, for me, sometimes when you infuse a little bit of youth, when you get some new blood into a band, especially when you've been doing this for decades, I feel like it can revitalize a band, and I feel like it can bring the best out of a group of people. And I think that that's definitely something that happened on Firepower. I could make a whole video talking about this album, dissecting every part of it, but I'll just leave it as my number one album of 2018. I listened to a ton of albums this year. Real quick, I'm gonna read off some albums that I bought or I listened to that came close to making this list. There were albums from Portal, Sleep, Immortal, Mournful Congregation, Haunt, Drook, Tribulation, Rivers of Nile, Genocide Pact, Saxon, Craft, Sargeist, Whoredom Rife, Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats, Mammoth Grinder, Necrophobic, Carpenter Brute, Bloodbath, Skinless, Vomitor, Bone Hunter, Morketida, Down Among the Dead Men, Lucifer, Mare, Burial Invocation, Deathhammer, Deicide. I could have made a separate list just for the albums that didn't make my top 40. But, you know, that's how strong 2018 was. It was a lot of work just to whittle this down to 40. I appreciate so much everyone who's watched these videos, everyone who's followed along, and especially if you found something that you truly like and enjoy, and if you went out and bought it and supported that artist or supported that record label, thank you. That is what I do this for. This list is a lot of fun, it's a lot of work, but it's also very rewarding, especially when people tell me that they discovered something new, went out and bought it. You know, just the conversations that I have talking about new music, bands that are new, bands that are old that are still doing it. It's just, it's really the main reason why I do shit like this. It's incredibly rewarding for me personally. I hope that you enjoy this. You know, I would do this shit if, you know, 5 people watch these videos and I'm doing it. If, you know, 1,000 people watch, that doesn't matter to me. It's just a number. The important thing to me is that we all continue to support, nurture, and take care of this scene, this whole underground extreme metal. You know, every album on my list is part of metal, pretty for the most part, and mostly underground shit that you're not gonna hear on the radio, shit that you're not gonna hear on, even like if you have Sirius XM radio and you listen to liquid metal, a lot of that is not this. So if this is where you come to get your fix on the smaller bands, the underground shit, I'm here to deliver. So as always, thank you for tuning into this video. 2018 was a fucking great year for metal. I hope that 2019 is just as good, if not better. Keep liking, keep commenting, keep subscribing, all that cool shit. And until the next time, take care.